Have you ever clung to something so tightly, an idea, a person, a belief, that it began to consume you? That pain you're feeling, that ache in your chest, that quiet despair humming beneath your daily life, it's not random. It's not just the world being cruel or fate playing games with you. It's because you're holding on to something that no longer serves you. You grip it with the hope that it will bring you peace, but instead, it's the very thing causing your suffering. And what's more terrifying than pain itself is realizing you are the one keeping it alive. We live in a world that tells us to accumulate possessions, titles, validation, even pain. Society rewards the one who never forgets, who never lets go of a grudge, who clings to ambition like a lifeline. But in the silence of your own heart, have you noticed that every time you hold on too long, whether to a memory, a failure, or a person who walked away, you are not preserving your identity, you're imprisoning your soul. The real you, the one beneath the ego and the storylines, is begging to be free. But freedom requires release, and release requires courage. Will you dare to let go of what you think defines you? There's a sacred irony in all of this. You think you're protecting yourself by holding on, but you're actually keeping yourself in pain. The breakup that happened years ago, the betrayal that shattered your trust, the dreams that didn't come true, you revisit them like sacred relics, as if keeping them alive will somehow rewrite the past. But the past is a ghost. It cannot be touched. It cannot be changed. So why do you let it touch you every day?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
You suffer because you tell yourself the story that it matters more than it does now. That if you let go, you're giving up. But letting go is not giving up. Letting go is giving into peace, to flow, to the deeper intelligence of the universe that's gently trying to guide you forward. You see, life isn't static. It's a river. And you're trying to build a dam with your pain, trying to stop time with your memories. But the river doesn't care. It flows on. And if you stop moving with it, you drown in stillness that was never meant to be. Think about this. What have you carried for far too long? What grief, what identity, what version of yourself are you still dragging through every conversation, every decision? If you remove that weight, who would you be? Would you still recognize yourself? That's the fear, isn't it? That if we let go, we lose meaning. But the truth is, when you let go, you don't become less, you become more. I remember sitting in silence for days, meditating under the shadow of a Himalayan mountain. I had no phone, no name, no schedule, just breath. And in that quiet, I found something terrifying. The realization that most of my suffering wasn't from what had happened to me, but from what I refused to release. I had built an identity around my pain. It gave me purpose. It made me feel special. But it was also destroying me. So I asked myself one question, a question I now ask you: who are you without your pain? The moment you answer that honestly, the chains begin to fall. But most people never ask. Most people are too scared to know the answer. Because pain is familiar. Pain is predictable. Letting go means stepping into the unknown, and the unknown feels like death to the ego. And so we stay in suffering because it's safer than surrender. But what if surrender is the only real safety there is? Letting go is not passive. It's an act of immense spiritual courage. It's the warrior's path. It's the moment you stop blaming others and start reclaiming your energy. Every time you forgive someone, you're not doing it for them, you're doing it for you. Every time you release a toxic thought, you're not being weak, you're being wise. Wise enough to understand that freedom is a choice, not a reward. You think you can't let go because it means the past wins. But the past already happened. Letting go doesn't erase what you went through, it simply stops it from owning you. Do you really want your future to be a hostage to what no longer lives? That old version of you, the one who was wronged, abandoned, or misunderstood, they don't need more justice. They need your release. They need your permission to evolve. We often confuse control with strength. But the strongest people I've ever met are the ones who have learned to flow. They don't force, they don't chase, they don't cling. They trust. They trust that if something is meant for them, it will stay. And if it leaves, it was never theirs to begin with. That's not weakness. That's divine power. That's alignment with the frequency of truth. You see, suffering is a form of resistance. And resistance comes from fear. Fear that you'll be nothing if you stop holding on. But what if that nothingness is where your true self lives? What if the void you're so afraid of is actually the womb of your rebirth? What if the pain you've tried to avoid is the very gatekeeper to your transformation? Let me tell you something you already know deep down. Everything is temporary. Every relationship, every breath, every thought. So why cling to what is destined to change? Why fight the tide of impermanence? When you hold on to what must go, you suffer. When you let go, you grow. It's not poetic. It's spiritual law. So here's a challenge. Today, pick one thing. One grudge, one regret, one wound, and release it. Not because it's easy, but because you're tired. Tired of carrying what no longer fits. Tired of being defined by a moment that is past. Tired of building a life around what hurts instead of what heals. Are you brave enough to live without that burden? Letting go is like cleaning your spiritual house. It makes room for miracles. It invites in clarity. It opens paths you didn't even know existed. And sometimes the universe is just waiting for you to unclench your fists so it can place something better in your hands. But how can it do that if your hands are still full of yesterday? The most powerful people in the world are not those who have conquered others, they are those who have conquered themselves. And self-conquest begins with release. The moment you stop trying to bend life to your will and instead align with its flow, you become unstoppable. You become light. You become free. And freedom, real freedom, is the absence of need to control what was never yours to control. Do you really think the universe made you to suffer endlessly? Or have you just mistaken your attachments for your identity? Sit with that for a moment. Don't rush past it. What if the key to the joy you've been searching for is not in gaining more, but in letting go of what you already have? What if all your healing begins the moment you stop resisting what is? We live in a culture that sells us the illusion of permanence, eternal youth, forever love, unchanging success. But these are illusions because all of life is movement. The tree lets go of its leaves. The river lets go of its water. the sun lets go of the day. So why can't you let go of your suffering? Why do you think you're the exception to nature's rhythm? You let go, not because you're giving up, but because you're waking up. Waking up to the truth that nothing you cling to will ever give you peace. Peace comes when you unclench your soul and allow life to be as it is. When you stop needing the story to end your way and start trusting that the story is sacred no matter how it ends. Isn't that the ultimate form of faith? You've carried your suffering like armor, haven't you? Worn it like a badge. You've convinced yourself that if you let go, you'll be vulnerable, weak, exposed to the world without defense. But here's the paradox: your armor isn't protecting you. It's suffocating you. You've built walls so high to keep pain out, but you've also trapped yourself in. You're not protecting your heart, you're burying it. And maybe that's why you haven't felt joy in so long, not because life has been unkind, but because you've been too guarded to receive what's already trying to find you. Letting go isn't forgetting. It isn't pretending it didn't matter. It's choosing to stop bleeding from the same wound. It's choosing to stop rereading the same chapter, hoping the story will change. The pain was real. The loss was real. But so is your power. And that power doesn't come from holding on tighter, it comes from realizing you never needed to hold on at all. Imagine for a moment that you could live without needing to fix the past. What would that feel like? We are taught to chase closure, to demand answers before we release. But the truth is, closure is a myth. Sometimes the apology never comes. Sometimes the explanation never arrives. And still, you must let go. Because clinging to the need for resolution is just another form of control. And control is the language of fear. Can you be brave enough to live without closure? Can you trust that peace is more important than understanding? Ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped trying to be right about your pain? What if you stopped defending your suffering as a justification for staying stuck? So many of us build identities around our wounds. I'm the one who was betrayed. I'm the one who lost everything. I'm the one who never got love. But these stories are not who you are. They are chapters, not the whole book. And the longer you keep rereading them, the more you delay writing the next, more beautiful one. Letting go is a choice, not a one-time event, but a daily sacred discipline. It's waking up each morning and saying, today I choose peace over pain, presence over memory, flow over force. It's not easy. In fact, it might be the hardest thing you ever do, because it means stepping into the unknown without your old crutches, your old narratives, your old excuses. But it's also the most liberating thing you'll ever experience. Have you noticed how much energy it takes to hold on? The mental loops, the emotional weight, the physical tension, you're exhausting yourself trying to keep something alive that's already dead. Whether it's an old relationship, a version of yourself you've outgrown, or a belief that no longer fits, the cost of carrying it is immense. And the worst part, it's stealing your now. It's stealing your life, and you don't get those moments back. Letting go is not a loss, it's a return to truth, a return to yourself. Because underneath all the clinging and grasping, you are already whole. You don't need to earn healing. You don't need to force freedom. You just need to remember what you've forgotten that your natural state is peace. Everything else is noise. Consider this. Why do you fear being empty? Why do you think that letting go of something will leave a void? Maybe that void is sacred. Maybe it's the space where miracles happen. Maybe that space is where your soul finally gets to speak. But you've been crowding it with noise-old pain, outdated dreams, unnecessary drama. What if your suffering is just your soul begging you to make space again? There's an ancient teaching that says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But sometimes, the teacher is not a person. Sometimes the teacher is a breakup, a failure, an illness, a heartbreak so deep you thought you'd never recover. And what if all of it, every crack in your armor, was grace in disguise? What if your suffering was never punishment, but preparation? You've been asking for change, haven't you? Praying for transformation. But transformation doesn't come through comfort. It comes through surrender. And surrender is letting go of the identity you've outgrown, the illusion you've clung to, the narrative that was never true. It's painful, but it's sacred pain. It's the pain of rebirth. And you're not dying, you're becoming. Letting go means trusting that nothing real can be lost. That love, true love, never dies. That truth doesn't need your defense. That your worth is not tied to who stayed or who left. That you are not your past. You are not your disappointment. You are not the version of yourself you had to be in survival mode. You are something deeper, something eternal. And that part of you cannot be harmed. So why do you keep arguing with reality? Why do you keep wishing things had turned out differently? They didn't. And that's okay. Because what if things turned out exactly as they needed to, so you could become who you were meant to be? What if the detour was the path? What if the loss was the lesson? What if the ending was the beginning in disguise? When you hold on, you create tension. Not just in your mind, but in your spirit. And tension blocks miracles. It blocks inspiration. It blocks love. Letting go, by contrast, is an act of trust. It's telling the universe, I no longer need to micromanage my destiny. I surrender to something higher. And in that surrender, something extraordinary happens. Life begins to move for you, not against you. Have you ever watched a bird fly? It doesn't cling to the wind. It rides it. It doesn't resist the direction, it moves with it. That's the wisdom of nature. That's the wisdom you've forgotten. We weren't meant to grip so tightly. We were meant to flow. And when you let go, you begin to remember that you, too, are part of that flow. You were never separate. You were never alone. Letting go also means forgiving yourself. For the mistakes, the failures, the moments you didn't know better. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to be real, authentic, awake. And sometimes the most awakening thing you can do is tell yourself, I forgive you. I release you. Let's begin again. And yes, not everyone will understand your letting go. Some will say you've changed. Some will try to pull you back into the old story. Let them. You don't owe anyone your suffering. You don't need permission to be free. You don't need consensus to evolve. The path of awakening is rarely crowded, but it is always worth it. So today, as you listen to this, I want you to find one thing, just one thing you've been holding on to. A belief, a grudge, a fear, a regret. Hold it gently in your awareness. Feel the weight of it. And then ask yourself, is this helping me grow, or is this keeping me small? And if it's keeping you small, let it go. Not because you have to, but because you're ready to. And if the tears come, let them. If the silence feels uncomfortable, sit with it. These are the signs that the soul is healing. These are the signs that something sacred is shifting. You are not breaking, you are opening. You are not falling apart, you are falling into truth. And truth, my friend, is the only thing worth holding on to. Now that you're here, right at the edge of yourself, ask this: what if your suffering is the echo of your refusal to trust life? We say we trust, we say we believe in divine timing, in the unfolding of things, but when the moment comes to release, we flinch. We tighten our grip. We reach back toward the familiar pain, because at least we understand it. At least it makes sense. But life doesn't expand in the comfort of what makes sense. It expands in the brave, open hands of surrender. And surrender is another word for love. Letting go is an act of love, not just for others, but for yourself. When you forgive someone who never apologized, you're not saying they were right. You're saying your peace matters more than being right. When you release the dream that didn't manifest, you're telling the universe you trusted has something even greater in store. And when you let go of who you thought you had to be, you make space for who you actually are. That is love. Real, raw, radical love. And let's talk about love, because so much of our suffering is tied to it. We hold on to people who were never meant to stay. We chase someone's potential instead of accepting their reality. We replay every word, every moment, every mistake, thinking we could have done something differently. But love is not control. Love is not possession. Love is freedom. And if you truly loved them or yourself, you wouldn't need to hold on. You'd set them free. And in setting them free, you'd set yourself free. But we confuse attachment with love. We think, if I let go, it means I didn't care. But caring doesn't require clinging. In fact, the deepest kind of care is the willingness to release what isn't aligned. To say, I love you, but I love me too. And I cannot keep sacrificing my soul just to feel connected. That's not selfish. That's sacred. That's the kind of love that heals generations. You may be asking, but how do I let go when it still hurts? The answer isn't to wait until it stops hurting. You let go while it's still raw. You let go with shaky hands and a trembling heart. You let go in the middle of the night when no one sees the tears. You let go because you know holding on is slowly killing you. And you want to live. You want to live. Letting go is not about deleting the memory. It's about removing the charge. It's about being able to look back and say, yes, that happened. And yes, it shaped me. But it no longer owns me. You become the witness, not the prisoner. The author, not the character. And every time you release a layer of attachment, you reclaim your power. That's what awakening looks like. You've probably heard the saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. But what does that really mean? It means pain will come loss, disappointment, change. But suffering is what happens when you resist the pain, when you judge it, when you replay it, when you refuse to accept it. Letting go is the antidote to suffering. It's the decision to meet pain with presence, not resistance. Have you ever noticed how nature lets go without grief? The trees shed their leaves. The ocean releases its waves. The sky lets go of the light each night, and none of it clings. None of it mourns what must pass. It simply trusts the cycle, trusts that letting go is not death, it's rebirth. Can you trust the same? Can you trust that what's leaving your life is making space for something your soul has been asking for? Let go of the idea that letting go has to feel good. Sometimes it feels like grief. Sometimes it feels like dying. Sometimes it feels like betrayal. But those feelings are not signs of failure, they are signs of transformation. You are shedding skin. You are burning old maps. You are unlearning everything that kept you small. That's not loss. That's liberation. And yes, you will feel empty. You will feel lost. But don't rush to fill that space. Don't numb it with noise. Let it echo. Let it sit. That emptiness is holy. It's the space between stories. It's the silence between notes. It's where your truth begins to rise. And if you can stay with it just a little longer than is comfortable, you'll find a new song begins to play. You are not what you've lost. You are not your failure. You are not your trauma. You are what remains after all that is gone. You are the awareness, the witness, the light. And that light doesn't need to hold on to shine. It shines because it is. That's who you are. You just forgot. Letting go is how you remember. So if you're still holding on, ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I let go? Will I disappear? Will I be forgotten? Will I be alone? Sit with those questions. Let them crack you open. Because the truth is, you won't disappear, you'll finally appear. You won't be forgotten, you'll finally be remembered by your own soul. You won't be alone, you'll finally meet yourself. And when you do, you'll realize you were never meant to carry all this. You were never meant to hold your past like a trophy. You were never meant to carry other people's expectations like chains. You were meant to fly. But you can't fly with anchors tied to your wings. So cut the rope, burn the script, trust the wind. Your wings remember. Your soul remembers. Letting go is not a one-time thing. It's a practice, a muscle, a choice you make every time the memory resurfaces. Every time fear whispers, what if you need that? And every time you reply, if I needed it, it would still be here. That's trust. That's freedom. That's spiritual maturity. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to say, I no longer choose this path. Even if others don't understand, even if it scares you, even if your entire identity has been built around what you're now releasing. Because the only real commitment you have in this life is to the truth of your soul. And your soul is not static. It moves. It grows. It lets go. So here you are, at the edge. The old you is fading. The new you is emerging. And all that's left is one final breath, one final surrender. Can you take it? Can you release not because it's easy, but because it's time? Whisper to yourself, I let go. Say it again. Say it until it becomes a prayer, a mantra, a frequency vibrating through every cell of your being. And then listen. Listen to the silence that follows. That silence is not empty, it's full of everything you've been waiting for. Peace, clarity, power, love. It's all there, waiting behind the veil of your clinging. And now, finally, you've pulled the veil back. You've let it go. And so I leave you with one final question, one that, if you answer honestly, will change your life. Who could you become if you were brave enough to let go of everything you think you are? Let that question live in your bones. Let it guide every step. Because one day when you look back, you won't remember what you held on to. You'll remember what you let go of and how that was the moment you finally came home to yourself.